So we're going to talk about social media and showing up on social media, what to post, and all of that good stuff. So the first thing that I'm going to start with is sort of why I think most agents have a hard time figuring out what the heck to post. And I think a lot of it is because we look and we follow other agents and we don't actually like what they're posting. And so we don't want to be doing the same things, which I totally get. I think a lot of people in the way that they're using social media in this industry, it's kind of spammy and it's not really valuable. And so a lot of the time what happens is we don't want to show up like that. And so then what happens is we don't post at all because we don't know what to post or what to do or all of those things. So the first thing that we want to kind of keep in mind when we're talking about any kind of social media posting, any type of content creation, anything like that, is who are you talking to, right? So the ideal client profile is going to be the most important thing that really in general that we ever create or we ever do, knowing who you're speaking to. And there's this kind of idea of like when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And we've heard that a million times. We all know that. But then we need to, first of all, really focus in on who we want to be speaking to. When we have clarity on that, which I will do another training on that, Whitley had also asked for that. But when we're talking, like once we have that really clear, then only then can we actually create a message that's actually going to resonate with those people. So, whether or not you're speaking to first-time buyers or move-up buyers or upsizers or downsizers or corporate women or the LGBT community, whatever it is that your focus is, make sure that all of your content is for them. The biggest mistake that we see people making over and over and over again is posting content or creating content that's relevant to you. And so when you do that, when you're reposting things, you're talking about things that are relevant to you or that have spoken to you, what ends up happening is you actually end up just attracting other agents. And you kind of by accident, what ends up happening is your content isn't actually directing or attracting or anything towards your ideal client. So that's kind of the first thing to keep in mind. So before you create any content whatsoever, you want to ask yourself, who is this for? Who is this for? How do I want them to feel? And what's the outcome that we actually want to have from this content? So once we get to that point, then there's a couple of other pieces. There's actually what to say in terms of like, what kind of content to post. And then also imagery and videos. And I get it. Social media can be super overwhelming. So I'm going to kind of break it down into some smaller pieces. And if you guys have been watching any of my audits, then obviously you will have heard me say a couple of these things before. When we're talking about content, whenever we're talking about any kind of social media, and you see this all the time with real estate agents, it's the just listed, just sold, just listed, just sold. Here's a picture of a kitchen. That's not actually valuable. It's not actually helping anybody. Basically what you're doing is you're showing the world that you have business in hopes that it's going to attract more business. Not the greatest way of going about things. You have to remember what social media at the core of everything really is. Social media is just social media. It's meant for human beings in an online way to be able to be social with each other. It's a human connection thing. So we have to keep that in mind when we're creating content. So there's three major buckets of content that for the most part you want to make sure that you're using in order to give each person who is following you or finding you on social media everything that they need to know you, like you, trust you, want to work with you. So in the program, we teach 9 different types of content, but I'm going to simplify this today and just kind of talk about the 3 different buckets. So your first bucket of content is going to be authority content, which is going to be things like authority value, your process solution, which you should have a signature process in your business, case studies and testimonials, and PR. If you don't have any PR, that's something that's actually going to be really important in terms of building authority over time. Then your second content bucket is going to be your personal content, right? So your personal content, you know what I did? I just combined 2 of the content buckets. So yeah, authority content, process solution. Your second content bucket is going to be social proof, which is things like case studies, testimonials, PR. So that's your social proof bucket. So basically what you're doing is it's showing other people that you have happy clients. You've worked with people who are happy and that have good things to say, and you've been successful with them, getting them to where they want to go. The third content bucket is going to be your personal content. This is where a lot of agents kind of go wrong or don't include, and their profile becomes very like businessy, and then over time you kind of lose people. Whenever we're talking about social media, we have to remember that people don't move 50 times a year. People move like once every 3 to 7 years. So if you're only relevant to your followers during a short period of time, every 3 to 7 years, it's going to be really difficult for you to actually grow an audience. So that's where the personal stuff comes in. Personal beliefs, personal philosophy, personal story, sharing things about your life. A lot of the time, agents feel a lot of, I would say, resistance to that. And I think the reason for the resistance is because they think, well, I'm a professional. My lawyer doesn't show this kind of stuff online. Well, no, but your lawyer for the most part isn't probably advertising that much. And your lawyer isn't dealing with people's most vulnerable times in their lives. We have to remember, people don't move because it's fun. Moving's actually kind of crappy when you think about it, and like everything that goes into it. It's expensive, the time commitment, you're packing all your stuff up and moving it somewhere else. The only reason that people move is because their current situation isn't serving them anymore, and they have a desired situation that is kind of the vision, or they imagine their life will be better in this other situation. So keep that in mind when you're creating content and who you want to be speaking to. Now, from an imagery perspective, I'm going to talk about kind of do's and don'ts. Post lots of pictures of yourself. I know that it feels egotistical and it feels weird, and I get it because I have to do it too. But when it comes to social media, people want to see you. They don't want to see pictures of pretty houses. There's already accounts for that. People can follow these massive houses accounts that are just showing a whole bunch of pretty pictures of homes. When it comes to you, people want to see you. They want to get to know you. They want to build a relationship with you. If you think about influencers that you follow and the people that you kind of feel like you have a relationship with, even though you've never met them, they're posting pictures of themselves. They're showing up in videos. They're being themselves in an online capacity. So kind of keep that in mind. So pictures of you. The other thing that's going to be really important is that you don't just take a picture and post it. You need to brighten your photos. A lot of the time what ends up happening is your photos are the first thing that someone's going to notice, and then they're going to take a look at the caption or whatever you have written underneath it. You want to make sure that your photos are light and bright and airy. So it's very easy. You can use any kind of an editing app, and you can literally just up the exposure. And what that's going to do is it's going to make your photo stand out amongst all the other photos. Okay, so that's something that's going to be important too. The other thing that I want to talk about when it comes to photos is the orientation of your photos. So if you're scrolling through your feed and you're just looking at things, whether on Facebook or on Instagram, 99% of the time people are doing it on their phones. So you want to think about, from an imagery perspective, how you're going to take up the most space, because space really at the end of the day is going to equal some sort of attention. So if you post a vertical picture, it's actually going to take up more space than a horizontal picture. So keep that in mind. When you're actually taking some of these photos, if you want to take up more space on the screen, you want to take some photos vertically, which is not the way that most of us tend to take photos. So keep that in mind as well, taking up more space. The other thing I want to address as well is branding on your photos. This is a don't. And a lot of agents do this. It's, creating some sort of a weird banner that has your face on it, or a logo on it, or whatever. And I said this a lot in this group, but it's really important to note. If it looks like an ad, people are going to be repelled by it. We don't like being advertised to, especially when it comes to social media and organic social media. So keep that in mind. Don't put branding on your videos. Don't put branding on your photos. Keep things as clean and organic as possible so that people really feel like they're not being advertised towards, and they're just feeling like they're connecting with you. Okay, so that's going to be really important as well. Your branding is actually going to hurt some of your, I guess, reach or connection or whatever. People, and this has been tested a lot, as people scroll through their social media, if they see something that looks like an ad, then they're actually going to scroll faster. So that's really important to note. What else do I want to talk about with you today? Hashtags. So this has come up a couple of times, and I've been just kind of talking about social media in general. Hashtags are a thing on Instagram. They are not a thing on Facebook. Facebook tried to make it a thing a couple years ago. It didn't take. People don't search for hashtags on the Facebook platform. So when you use hashtags, what you're doing is you're just kind of wasting space, and it's kind of looking a little spammy. So use hashtags 100% on Instagram. Keep them off of Facebook. The other thing too that I want to talk about, just kind of to wrap things up, is spacing of your captions. So a lot of the time when we start to create longer form captions, they sometimes get a little longer, and people end up with these big chunks of text. Big chunks of text when it comes to social media or some sort of like an attention grabbing platform. Basically what happens is like we're not sitting down on Instagram to read an article like we would if we sat down to read The Economist. So you want to make sure that you're spacing your captions out a lot. I know that this isn't something that, like, when we're taught how to write in English, that's not something that we're taught to do. We're taught to like write in proper paragraphs. This does not apply to social media. You don't want any more than 2 or 3 lines at a time before you have a break. So it's easier on the eyes, and people really like to scroll. So if you're giving someone the ability to actually scroll through that content, it's going to be really helpful. When you're actually, and so if you're kind of looking at any social media, the hook or the first line of your piece of content is by far the most important thing. So because really what's happening is someone needs to push that more button before they're actually going to see the rest of your content. So, and you want to think of Facebook and Instagram a little differently than we used to. I know Instagram used to be a very visual platform. Nowadays, Instagram's more like a mini blog. People don't really read blogs that much anymore. So a lot of the time, Instagram is used as that mini blog. So you don't want to be posting one line with a photo. It's not going to get that much traction. It's not going to help you with the algorithm. So you want to have longer form captions or giving value and using those 3 buckets of content, alternating throughout that content to make sure that you're giving people everything that they need to know, like, and trust you. So the spacing of the captions, that's going to be 2 or 3 lines at the most. The other thing too, when it comes to your hashtags, you want to drop your hashtags down so that it doesn't all get bunched up with your caption itself, and it doesn't get distracting for people who are actually consuming that content. I'm going to do another one of these because I know that this is a lot of information, and I actually have a podcast interview coming up in a couple of minutes. But if you have questions about anything that I said in this or anything else that you want me to cover, throw it in the comment box. I promise you I will get back to you, and I hope this was helpful.